Hey everyone, this is Susan from BuzzSumo, and if you are just logging in, I am happy to have you here. We turned the session on a few minutes early because we've had so many people sign up today. We wanted to give everyone a chance to get logged in. So I will be back at the top of the hour and we will get started then, but just wanted to say hello and let you know that we will start shortly. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's expert webinar with BuzzSumo. We're going to be talking about repurposing content. Our guest is Ashley Ward from SEMrush, and I'm going to introduce her in just a moment. But I did want to take a second and fill you in on a couple of things. The first is that we will and are recording this session, and you will receive a video of today's presentation. So no worries there. You'll get the video. We typically send those out the day after the session. In this case, you'll get the recording emailed to you on Monday. So look for that in your inbox on Monday. Ashley has offered to take questions, which is great. And if you think of a question that you would like to ask, please do go ahead and enter it into the chat box during the session. You don't have to remember it and keep it in your head. So if you have a question about repurposing content, please do drop that question into the chat box. I see several of you are saying hi, so I'm so glad you're here. And I'm personally looking forward to hearing more about repurposing content, and something that is on my mind a lot, as BuzzSumo has a lot of content and we also do a lot of research projects. Those tend to give us lots of opportunities to repurpose. So let's go ahead and officially kick off our event. Let me say hello again. My name is Susan Moeller, and I am the Senior Marketing Manager here at BuzzSumo. BuzzSumo is a tool that helps you to understand your audience better so that you can provide great content and connect with them on the topics that are of most interest to them. And I'm joined today by Ashley Ward. So thrilled to have her. She is the Digital Marketing Strategist for SEMrush. SEMrush is an all-in-one digital marketing tool that provides data to almost 3 million marketers and businesses, including BuzzSumo. We're huge fans of the tool, and I religiously open the email that tells me each week how we're ranking for specific terms. I know it comes on Friday, and it's one of the few brand emails that I actually look forward to. So good job, SEMrush, on that. Ashley has also been the CEO of a marketing agency. She's been a social media specialist and a content writer. Thrilled to learn about repurposing content from you, Ashley. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, glad to have you, and welcome to everyone who's joining us.
Yes. Okay. Can you see my screen and everything all good?
Everything's all good on the screen. We can see it.
Perfect.
Super.
Perfect. Let's get started. So today I'm going to be going into how you can repurpose your content. I'm going to be showing you a case study as well as some fundamental examples and rules to follow. So to get started, a little bit of background about myself. I have been in the digital marketing agency for about 7, 8 years now. And I started, with a journalism background, and then slowly got into online as everything shifted online, and tried to do everything all at once. Definitely focused on a lot of different digital marketing, and then honed in on what I really love, and that's social and content marketing. About a year and a half ago, I joined SEMrush, and I've had the pleasure to travel around the world and teach social and content marketing best practices. If you're not familiar with SEMrush, we offer almost 40 tools now inside of our toolkits for everything you need to do in terms of managing your online visibility. So to get started, generally the idea when it comes to content is to create less and promote more of the content that we already have. But we get told from consumers how there's so much content out there and it's so difficult to actually digest everything. Understandable. And then we hear from in-house marketers who are like, oh, the company that I'm working for is in such a boring industry. It's so hard to create any new content for them. And then we have agencies who are like, okay, I figured out how to create content for them. I know what topics to write about, but my client doesn't have any budget. We can't promote any of the content, so it's just sitting in cyberspace. And then you have my favorite, the CEOs who are like, yeah, if you could just not write any content about me, that would be great. When really some of the best content is the vision behind a brand, why you created these products or why you chose to do these services. That can be the best and most converting content. So ideally, we need to know how we can recycle content this year and moving forward, how we can continuously create content that can be reused and repurposed. So SEMrush wanted to actually take a dive at this and better understand what repurposing means. So we develop case studies on a very, very regular basis. But our e-commerce study is something that we update annually. It gets updated every year. And what the e-commerce study does is it's about 60-something pages, and it goes through and it looks at all of the online data specifically for the e-commerce industry. So it looks at things like where's traffic primarily coming from, what countries are bringing the most organic search traffic, and things like that. So we decided, okay, let's try a repurposing case study with this actual e-commerce study. And we started with a goal, which was very specific. We wanted to increase our reach and gain new subscribers by repurposing the content, which was the e-commerce study. The first quarter, we didn't do anything to the content. We just let the case study get a great first round. And within the first quarter, we were able to reach about 10,000 users. We had 1,000 PDF downloads, and we received 11 new SEMrush subscribers from the case study. So all in all, okay, we gathered the metrics, and we had decent metrics. Now it was time to actually repurpose the study. So we decided, okay, let's create a blog post and kind of talk a little bit more about the study and take some highlights from it. So we went to the graphic design team and was like, all right, we need some fun graphics for this blog post. And they created this really awesome dragon character to go with it, and it helped brand it. And then they also created this infographic. And what made this infographic so great was that it had little screenshot sections that could make for social media posts. So all in all, we were getting lots of new content from this existing case study. We didn't have to create any new data. This was all data we already ran. And of course, the infographic and blog post led to going back to the study, which meant download the free PDF and then kind of go through the funnel. So the second quarter, we went with all of these different types of content, and our results were a lot better. We were able to reach almost 5,000 more people in the second quarter. We were able to get 200 more downloads, and we were able to get 20 payments in the second quarter. All in all, that was huge success for us. Not only did we reach our goal, but we surpassed our goal. And honestly, I don't think that we would have been able to hit that large of a reach and that many PDF downloads and that many increase of payments in the second quarter if we would have left that case study. Because if we would have just left the case study there, we would have fell into the claim that consumers tend to have, which, oh, there's so much content out there, now that's stale, it's a quarter old, just don't have time to actually look at it, it's not as exciting and new anymore. But we were able to make it fresh, new, and exciting with the blog post, the graphic, and the infographic. So in order to do something like that, you first have to understand that there are rules. You can't just go and create a blog post and think, all right, it's going to work and I'm going to increase my consumers or I'm going to increase my product sales. You first need to really know the difference between republishing your content versus recycling your content. Republishing your content is taking the same piece of content, but you're updating it. So you're updating the info, you're adding images to it, maybe you're adding a video to it, or you're just updating certain pieces of that original content. And then you're redistributing it. You're putting it out on social again. You're maybe sending it out in an email newsletter. You can even take a good example of something like this is lots of times businesses will do an annual post. So top 10 restaurants to go to in 2018. Well, that's only good for 2018. So going into the new year, you could update that post and change it to top 25 restaurants to go to in 2019. Now, recycling content is different. Recycling content is taking that original piece of content and reproducing the content into a brand new form. So it's, for example, it's taking that case study and recycling it into a blog post. We've now changed its original form. It's no longer just a case study, now it's also a blog post. Lots of times we see people doing this with videos. So they take an original idea from a blog post and they now take a video, or they pull the audio from a video, now they make a podcast out of it. Another rule that you need to follow is that you don't want to reuse all of your content. We chose just one of our many case studies, and we chose this one because it's something that's updated annually. So if this was going to be a successful experiment, we could run something like this every time we update the case study. Another rule is that you truly need to wait 2 weeks to republish your content. And that's because Google needs some time to give it a first index. You need to collect your metrics. And depending upon what your traffic size is, 2 weeks may be sufficient, or you may need something a lot longer, like an entire quarter or a full month, to get enough metrics, such as social metrics. And we're going to go over quite a lot of metrics coming up. But if you don't give it that time, you don't have any data to compare it to. We were able to literally compare the quarter by quarter results because we gave it time to get data. Another rule to follow is to not change the URL if you are republishing. Now, please do take this with a grain of salt, but this is just a rule of thumb because, believe it or not, we are human and we tend to make mistakes. So unless you're going to update the URL on every single place that link is, that means all of the social media posts that have a link on all of your different social profiles, all of the backlinks that you have, any internal links that you have, any email newsletter links, things like that. As long as you say use a tool like SEMrush to make sure you know where all of your links are, or you're a perfect human and will not make a mistake, it's best to just update the headline and not touch the URL. Okay, so now let's look at some instructions on how you can actually reuse content and implement this case study example for your own self or clients. First step is to define your content goals. We looked at our content goals before we even looked at what kind of repurposing should we do, whether it's republishing or recycling. And honestly, when you're looking at content, even if you're creating a brand new piece of content, or if you're trying to figure out which content to repurpose, you should always create content defined by your goals. So if you don't have a goal in place, don't go and create a brand new piece of content. Define your goals first. That's going to help give you direction on what kind of content to create, as well as what kind of content to republish. And that's because different content helps achieve different goals. For example, if you want to generate new leads, certain types of content are going to help you get more leads than, say, customer education. If your main goal is to increase your customer education because maybe you have a more complex product that isn't easily stated in just 2 or 3 words, then you may want to develop some training courses. You'll want to do a lot of how-to guides to better understand your business model as well. The second step is to audit your content. There are so many pros to auditing your content. Like, you're going to understand if there's a specific author that's helping you get the most converting content, you're going to know they're auditing your content. You're also going to be able to understand what's your best distribution methods. Is it email? Is it social? Or are you getting backlinks from a certain type of topic more than others? Are you getting more engagement on how-to or listicle articles? How long did it take before you can get metrics? There's so many benefits to auditing your content on a regular basis. And you can either use a tool like SEMrush to go through and run a content audit. You can also go ahead and use this Excel sheet. So these tabs go on and on and on and on and on, tons and tons of metrics to notate. You can go to bit.ly/content audit Excel and you'll all have access to this. This is a little spreadsheet I made for you guys. And it's just really, really helpful. I highly suggest going back for all of 2018 and auditing your content this year. That's a really good place to start. And then going forward, comparing 2019, you're going to be able to look back, and as you go through the different seasons and the holiday time, actually see, okay, how did your content perform during these specific periods? All right, the next step is to decide what you want to recycle and what you want to republish. So you do not need to do both, but for our example, we decided to do both, and it happened more naturally than it did intentionally. So with our blog post, we wanted to include an infographic with it, and we were able to recycle the content into the blog post, as well as republish it by changing a different medium entirely with the infographic. You, again, don't need to do both, but you do need to figure out what is going to make the most sense for you, whether you can just update the existing content or if you should change the entire format. Step number 4. Now we're at the distribution. Okay, you've defined your goals, you've audited your content and decided which content you can republish. Now you've also really looked at what you should recycle or if you should just republish. Now it's time to distribute. When it comes to distribution, I mean, this is one of my favorite quotes. It's content is king, but distribution is queen, and she wears the pants. And that is so incredibly true, because if you don't distribute your content wisely, it is just going to sit into cyberspace. Nobody is going to see it. Here are the 3 main distribution channels. You have paid, earned, and owned. Paid is going to be anything that you have to put a dollar or monetary value forward on. This is any paid social advertising, display ads, PPC, if you're paying influencers to help promote your content. And then earned are basically social high fives. This is your SEO, this is your ranking, this is the reviews that you're getting, any media coverage, any shares or brand mentions. And then owned is where the content should live. This is on all of your properties. So this is your website, your blog, your social media channels, YouTube as well. This is where your content needs to have its home base, essentially. The 5th step is to collect the data and measure it. You've sent it out to a bunch of different distribution channels. You've even put some paid advertising on it. So now it's time to actually give it some analysis and basically look at the data to see what happened. So here's some metrics that are really important that you want to take a look at. Page views, average time on page, page depth, unique visitors. These are all user behavior. This is how did the user interact with my content? Did they jump to a product page after? Did they bounce right back off and go to the search engine real quickly? Are they new or returning users? Where did they come from? Did they come from social or an email newsletter? And then you have your engagement metrics. This is your social media and your PR metrics. So on the left side, the social, very to the point. Any likes, shares, or comments that you got from sharing this on your social media channels. But then on the right, we look at PR. Did you get any brand mentions? Did you receive any positive sentiments from your brand mentions by publishing this certain kind of content? Or was it negative? Did you have neutral mentions? Are there possible influencers you can reach out to because they mentioned you? And then my favorite is the incoming requests and the republications. This is basically another brand or business in a similar industry, if not the same industry, that sees the content as like, hey, love this piece of content. Would you mind if I shared it? Or even better, would you want to partner together on a future campaign? I'm writing something similar, or I just produced something similar. We should partner together. Yes, that's perfect. Let's have you double the audience size and have it go to another industry or similar industry as well. Then there's the SEO metric. So this is, did the republishing or recycling the content actually improve my rankings? Did I generate any backlinks from it? What about my keywords? What about my organic traffic? What about my dwell time, which is the average length of a time a visitor spends on the page before returning to the search tab results? Then you have your company revenue, which everyone does tend to forget. By republishing this piece of content, did you generate any revenue? Did you not have any revenue before, and did this help you actually get revenue? It's really, really important to know which metrics matter the most for you. It's kind of similar to the idea of different content helps you achieve different goals. Well, depending on your goal, certain metrics are going to matter most. But at SEMrush, we like to put on our Mythbusters hat. And for quite a long time, we found that shares, time on page, and page views were notated as some of the most important metrics for measuring blog post success. And we decided to actually take a look at this and see, is that really true? We found that just because your blog post or your article was shared doesn't mean anybody read it. It means you had a great headline and they shared it and they wanted their friends or their family to see it, but it doesn't mean that anybody actually clicked on it and digested your content, let alone made a sale from it. Then there's time on page. Ever open up an email newsletter and it's a piece of content that you're actually excited about clicking on the button and going to their website and you actually want to read about it? Well, what happens when your phone rings, or say you notice, oh, I'm out of tea or coffee, and before I start reading this, I should probably go get some more coffee. And you get up, you have your phone call, you grab some coffee, and 6 minutes later, you come and sit back down, and then you start looking at the post, and you're like, I don't have time for this, and you go back. Whereas the author of that article is like, oh my gosh, yay, someone just spent 6 minutes on my article. No, they actually didn't. They didn't even engage with it. And then we have page views. If we could all stop writing clickbait headlines, that would be really awesome. But we're not. We're still marketers. We're still writing clickbait headlines, and it's really messing up our metrics. Just because someone clicks on it and we have a high amount of page views doesn't mean anybody actually engaged with the article or even read it. Lots of times they're bouncing right back off of it because the content didn't match the clickbait headline. So at SEMrush, we decided, all right, let's figure out how we can best actually monitor metrics that matter most for blog posts. And we created the WOW score, which is one of our newer tools and in beta. And what this does is it measures the active user time with the scrolling speed and the article length. At the top right, you can see a score of 97 on here. This is a public score, which is great for you as a marketer as well as for your clients to see when you're really hitting the mark with your content. So take a piece of content that's maybe 1,500 words, which that can take anywhere from 3.5 to 5 minutes to read. So based on that, we're actually able to measure on the back end how people are scrolling. With 1,500 words, they should be scrolling slowly to get to the bottom. If they're scrolling fast, then they're just skimming and they're not actually engaging with your content. They're not digesting your content, and you receive a lower score, and it notifies you, okay, you should probably write something that's a bit more engaging. Your demographic isn't responding to this. There's lots and lots of different companies that use things like this that actually measure a user's active reading time, not just time on page. So a few takeaways to notate with this when you're reusing content is to not be afraid of updating your old content. It's so funny, I hear all the time how people just don't want to touch their old blog post, or they don't want to mess up any of their old videos. They don't want to update anything. They just either want to leave it or delete it. What if you haven't even reached the tip of the iceberg with what that piece of content can do? What if by updating it, you can really reach your goals and get a huge amount of reach that you didn't even expect to get? I always suggest updating your old content. Let it sit for 2 weeks. Check the metrics. If it didn't perform, if it went negative, then change it back. But 9 times out of 10, it's going to benefit you to go and update your old content. You also want to really focus on turning your text into video and audio. Yes, we do still need text for the desktop users, but everything is moving towards mobile, which means we need to satisfy the mobile user first and the desktop second. And one great way to do that is by focusing on creating video content and stripping the audio from it, and also having audio options as well, so people can listen or watch on the go. This is a great example of updating your old content. Go through your old content and make videos out of them. Add audio to your old content. Add little sound bites. Coming from a journalism background, it's hard for me to not recommend something like this, but lots of times we're writing about statistics. We're taking quotes from people. Why not actually have those sound bites embedded into your text content with a little play button? Now you have interactive content, and this is where content is going in 2019 and beyond. You also want to share your content on SlideShare and Quora. So a great way to redo your content, taking an original piece of content and recycling its form, is to actually make it a SlideShare presentation. Take that informative content and put it on SlideShare. Or even better, take the business and marketing hat off for just a second and put the user hat on. Head on over to Quora, where your customers are. Go over to forums where your customers are actually asking questions, and answer them with your content. Add links to your content that has the answer to their information, and do it from a user perspective so it doesn't feel like a sales pitch. You also want to turn your old blog posts into ebooks. For those using WordPress out there, this is very, very easy to do because you categorize your content like I know you're supposed to. So a good example of this is, take that restaurant example. So maybe there's a food category and you have lots and lots of blog posts about food. Well, export those blog posts out. Hire a graphic designer, or if you have one internally, have them create an ebook cover and a table of contents. Each one of those old blog posts about food now becomes a chapter for your ebook. You can then take this ebook and sell it on Amazon, or even better, you can offer it as a lead gen source for free on a landing page or on your website. And finally, you must think mobile first with all of your content, especially as you're going through and trying to figure out what content to recycle or republish. And that's because mobile devices are projected to reach 79% of global internet use by the end of this year. That's huge. That is a ginormous statistic. And it's also terrifying because nearly 8 in 10 customers are going to stop engaging with your content if it doesn't display well on their mobile device. So whether you're updating your old content, you're creating new content, you're recycling, or you're republishing, if you're not thinking about the mobile user first, you're going to lose that engagement. And so, left side of brain, I was like, all right, what are some tactical ways? Like, what does it really mean to republish content for the mobile user? And so here's some very, very tactical ways for the left side of brain folks. Your text size. You need to keep your text size at a readable size. This does not mean it needs to be ginormous. There is a certain demographic that prefers the larger text size. And by all means, please do satisfy them. But A/B test your text size to see what size really makes the most sense for your demographic. Then your images. Your images and videos need to be rendered. They need to have very, very small file sizes. They need to be optimized. And that's because if they don't, and if your page takes more than 2 seconds to load, you're going to lose your reader. You're going to lose your potential customer. They're going to bounce right off because it's taking way too long for that image or video that they want to watch to load. And they're going to go back to search results and most likely click on your competitor. So then I wanted to also come up with, okay, for the right side brain folks like myself, what does this mean? Like, let's look at this big picture. What does it mean to create content for the mobile user? So I went into SEMrush and I was like, okay, for desktop users, I just took a random example like BuzzFeed. When they're going to BuzzFeed, what are they searching for? What's their queries? So went in, and the top 5 keywords that they're using when they're going to BuzzFeed, the first 2 are branded terms, BuzzFeed and BuzzFeed quizzes, which makes sense. And then quiz, because they're very known for it, air fryer, and food, because now they're very much so in the food industry. And, you know, on a desktop, you're needing a break from your emails and from your workload, so you're taking the Game of Thrones quiz to see which character you are. You're looking at food recipes because if you're anything like me, you're hungry all day long while you're working and thinking about food because food is the best, and that just tends to happen. So very, very common. This makes a lot of sense for the desktop user. But then you go to the mobile user. And on mobile devices, when they're going to BuzzFeed, they're looking at something totally different. First is your branded term, of course, but then we have Nicki Minaj, celebrity gossip, quizzes, because we're still curious about what Game of Thrones character we are, yo mama jokes, and would you rather. You ever been in a life or death situation and need a yo mama joke as fast as possible, or someone just dropped a would you rather on you and you need a rebuttal right away? You're going to look for one on your phone. You're going to look for an immediate answer. You're going to look for something fast and something that is actionable. So as you're going through your content, as you're running your content audits and trying to figure out what content you should reuse, what content you should repurpose, what medium it should be, think of this mobile example for BuzzFeed and think of the yo mama jokes and the would you rather. Are you creating content that is fast and actionable to satisfy the mobile user? Because if you aren't, in 2019, you will be behind and your competitor will be ahead of you because they're already focusing on the mobile user first when it comes to their content. That is all from me on how to reuse content, and I would love to open up to take any questions that you guys have. If you also feel more comfortable, you can please feel free to follow me on Twitter, tweet me your questions. You can also email me any questions that you have. I'm more than happy to be a resource for you.
Ashley, thanks so much. That is awesome. I learned a ton and I jotted down a couple of notes. One is I really appreciated how you walked through mobile versus desktop and made some
Mhm.
specific suggestions about that, because I think that's one of those things that I know, but having examples was really good. And I loved your emphasis on finding goals first. Yes. So we do have some questions. Here's one from me, and that is when you're thinking about measuring revenue, and maybe I just missed this in the slide that you shared, but what are some of the ways that you tie revenue to specific pieces of content?
So a couple of different ways of looking at revenue is looking at reach as well as looking at the linking. So really being able to track the buyer's journey. So
Mhm.
lots of times it's hard to do something like that, and especially hard to do that from content. But if you're able to track where they came from originally. So say you shared a piece of content on Facebook and they clicked on the link from Facebook, they looked at the content. You can then track where did they go from there? Did they go to the product page and then make a purchase? Perfect. Or did lots of times what will happen is they need to do more research. So being able to literally track that full buyer's journey, and there's lots and lots of tools that can help you do that. You can even do something like this in Google Analytics and see where are they going from your piece of content. That's going to help find out who's generating you the most revenue. Also doing something like we did with our ebook case study. So at the bottom we have the get PDF button. When we republished that piece of content and turned it into an infographic and turned it into a blog post, we still had that button on all of those reused pieces of content. And every time someone clicked that button, we were able to then track with UTM parameters where they went and if they then signed up to be an SEMrush customer.
That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Here's a question from Jose who asked it at the very beginning of the session. How can I share content made by another author and at the same time help me grow my audience without infringing any issue related to copyright, etc.?
Certainly. So this goes back to that PR example I gave of republications. So 9 times out of 10, a business loves to hear from another business saying, hey, I love the piece of content that you created. Can I share it with my audience? I'd happily give you a link. Yes, by all means, please give me a link to the piece of content. I would love that as well. And you're going to double my reach. So always ask for permission.
Mm-hmm.
Fill out their contact form if they don't have an email address. Otherwise, contact them. If you can, find the author on LinkedIn. That's a great way to reach out to them on a more personal level as well. And just ask them. They're more than happy as long as you give them a link, because you're helping further their distribution cycle as well. And that will help your reach because now you're sharing from other companies and you're not just being another sales pitch of only talking about your own content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even from an influencer standpoint, those relationships are really valuable. And
Yes.
a lot of times when people think about influencers, they think about like blasting a link after they've written the content. And, you know, what we're always encouraging people to do is think long term, and developing a relationship with an author like that is hugely valuable.
Correct. Correct.
This is about the republishing and changing or not changing the URL. This is Ademola, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, asking, can you change the URL and then simply redirect the old URL to the new?
Certainly. So redirects is another great option to do. I just like to do this as a rule of thumb for the URL, just going across all experience levels. Some people are not that comfortable setting up redirects, or they rather have their team do it, things like that. By all means, redirects would be a great alternative to doing that and keeping the URL safe.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, so this is asking about your case study, and I'm just going through the questions kind of from the top to the bottom. And again, Ashley, so much appreciate you taking these. Did your case study have any branding or graphic changes before the second push?
No, it actually didn't. So the case study itself remained the same. And each year we just update the content itself. So we look at the traffic analytics and see how the data has changed.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't change any of the graphics. So the blog post was the first round of a new graphic.
Okay, cool. That's great. I do notice that someone has their hand raised. If you have a question, go ahead and jot it into the chat box. That's probably the easiest way to get those answered. Here's a question. Are there any easily checked metrics that we can find on our own to compare old content to updated content? Metrics beside the WOW score. The person was saying that the WOW score might be difficult to explain to a client. And so I guess a follow-up to that is, one, are there other metrics besides the WOW score? And the second is, with regards to the WOW score, how would you explain it to someone who's maybe outside the industry?
Certainly. So the WOW score is just one tool. There's several tools out there, but in terms of metrics, it really goes back to what the goal is, what the original goal was. So for us, our metrics that mattered to us was the reach, the downloads, and actual sales. That was our original goal, and those three were the most important metrics. So it really depends on what you're looking at. Reach is a great metric to look at always, because you're looking at what was the overall exposure. And in order to get reach, you're looking at a combination of metrics. You're looking at the social metrics, the page views, the clicks, things like that as well. In terms of explaining the WOW score to someone who's not inside of the industry, a great way to compare it is like grade school. You're basically getting a plus or an F on your test. And you're getting an A plus if you actually created content that your demographic wanted and engaged with. If you're getting a lower grade score, then that's showcasing, okay, this type of content, this topic, this data, how it was written, something about the content just didn't mesh well with our audience. We need to better refine our content.
That's great. I like that analogy. Someone was asking, how do you see the different search results based on desktop versus mobile in SEMrush?
Certainly. So you can see there's a little button. It depends on which tool you're inside of, but there's always a button either inside of your project or at the very top where you have the option to see this in desktop, or you have the option to see this in mobile in terms of the data. So most all of the tools give you the option to look at the mobile data as well.
Super. So someone Emer was asking about any steps you would suggest to do a content audit for actionable insights. I think you had some in the spreadsheet as well. Like if you answer the questions in the spreadsheet, those would be your steps. But would you like to summarize those as well?
Certainly. So the first step would be collecting your content. And so there's lots of tools out there that can help you collect the content, especially if you have like thousands and thousands of pages of content. It could manually take quite a while, but you first want to collect the content. Then once you've collected the content, then you're looking at the metrics and you're filling out the data sheet. Again, there's tools that can fill out the data for you, but if you prefer to do the manual option, or say you don't have that many pages of content, you can handle doing it on your own without it taking a month and a half, then I highly recommend going with the Excel sheet that I created. Again, the link is bit.ly/content audit Excel.
Yes, and as I learned with great pain during this session, you do have to remember that C in Excel when you're typing that link.
Yes.
So, anyone who was looking at it earlier, the corrected link is in the chat box. So if someone has a B2B client and is wondering, in this situation, the stats are reversed. 75% of traffic is from desktop and 25% from mobile. Would you recommend any repurposing or recycling changes or choices in that scenario?
100%. I would still focus a lot on video with your content, but also focusing on longer form content. A desktop user is more likely to engage with a 5,000 word article versus a 500 word article where the mobile user needs that 500-word article. So I would definitely look at creating, repurposing your content into longer form content if you don't currently have longer form content, and then also making it into videos.
That's great. Yeah, one thing we've seen a lot with BuzzSumo is that longer form, there's often lower volume in that longer form category and increasing engagement based on social shares. So it's an interesting thing. It's almost like you put yourself in a less competitive bracket, and also people seem to engage with it.
Correct.
When you republish content like a blog post, do you change the date to the current date so that it reappears as new content?
It depends. So it depends on how you've changed the content. If something's timely, like the 2019 top 25 restaurants, then by all means, you're going to need to update that you're going to update that date, because that's not going to look relevant or okay. For the most part, you can leave the date. Sometimes changing the date, if it's ranking well, can affect your ranking. So I would A/B test that.
That's great. Okay. We have 3 more questions, and I think a couple people have asked again about their recording, and yes, we will send out a recording. It typically takes us just a little bit of time to get that editing done, so you can expect that on Monday. Another question is, do you recommend a .mobi or dedicated mobile installation for mobile, or a responsive theme that delivers both?
Ooh.
I don't have an answer for that. Do you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, responsive, the minimum you need responsive.
Yeah.
I would honestly A/B test it. So I would just stick with the responsive and run responsive for 2 weeks, and then try option B, and see how your speed is improved as well as your engagement.
That's a great answer. Yeah, good thoughts. Always A/B testing for the win.
Yes, yes.
Okay, 2 more questions. Do you recommend always slightly updating content before republishing after a certain period of time, even if there isn't necessarily anything that needs to be updated? So, do we recommend a spit and polish even if it doesn't need one? What do you think?
Yes, because this goes back to what if you haven't even reached the tip of the iceberg on what the content can do for you? So definitely go back, and that had a very, very funny example about making your babies pretty because everyone's afraid to touch their babies. Well, what if you can make them prettier? Definitely go back to your older content, and even if you think, oh, it's performing great, it can probably perform even greater.
Yeah, that's a good point. And taste change. It's like, yes, my living room is still in pristine shape, but I decorated it last in the 1990s. So I might want to
Great example.
that. And then I think the last question that we'll have time to get to is from someone who is in the middle of a huge project, trimming hundreds of blogs into smaller categories and turning 10 old out-of-date blogs without holiday destinations into one out of 2 evergreens. Okay. But the question is, do you have any advice or pitfalls to look out for in a content shakeup like this where they're trimming hundreds of blogs? I have one because we've recently done this. If you'd like, I can start and then you can finish.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we did this at BuzzSumo recently. We did a content audit, and we are cutting and have cut a lot of our content. And the person that we worked with to help us with it was very clear about just the importance of handling the redirects well, and specifically using the regex function to make sure that all of our redirects were applied to every version of the URL. So that's my one pitfall to avoid. And I would suggest, if that terminology all makes you uncomfortable like it did me at first, to work with someone who's an expert in it, because you certainly do want to get those redirects in place.
Yes, yeah. The redirects are extraordinarily perfect. I mean, that's great advice, and you guys just went through it.
Super. Yeah. So watch out for that. And I do think you'll be encouraged by the results because, you can really increase your traffic that way.
Mhm.
Um, all right. Well, I think that we are about out of time, and I wanted to say thank you again to Ashley for this great presentation. We appreciate the time that you put into it and your expertise in this area. So, thanks for joining us today, and everyone. We appreciate your questions and being here with us. Thanks to everyone. Have a great day.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Bye bye, all.